What a lovely day to bake. My name is Arne and today we are ditching the water and diving into the tangy world of milk kefir for an unbelievable golden and flavorful sourdough. Trust me, this one is a game changer for taste and for texture. We explore how to use it and what happens when you do and tackle that tricky hydration. So let's get started. This is from Luxembourg with Loaf. We start the evening before we want to bake by combining 40 grams of flour with 40 grams of water, and then we're adding 5 grams of sourdough. We combine everything with a spoon, and once we're done, we take a rubber band to mark the height and leave it on the countertop overnight. At the next day, it's time to do our main dough. Therefore, we need first of all 400 grams of wheat flour. And then our shooting star comes into play, the kefir. This is homemade kefir. I'm having here 320 grams and I'm leaving a little bit aside. If you're interested how to make kefir, write me a comment. And then we also need our levain. This has been beautifully raisined overnight. It pretty much more than doubled, and taking a dough scraper to scratch the whole levain into my mixing bowl. And then it's time to give it a good stir. You can either use your hands directly or you can use such a dough whisk. But at one stage you will need to take your hands because the dough is quite stiff. This is what I haven't expected, to be honest. Usually when I combine water with flour, it's not that stiff. Then we cover our bowl and leave it rest for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, it's time to add the salt. You need 8 grams salt for this recipe, that's 2%, and then we add the remaining kefir. And in this step I should have taken a little bit more kefir. As I've already said, the consistency was a little bit too stiff and probably I should have gone by maybe 85% of kefir compared to the flour. After mixing everything in, I then covered the bowl again with this foil, and that will rest for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, it's time to do the first stretch and folds. Therefore, you wet in your hand and then you pull the dough up from one side and move it all over to the other side of the bowl. And then you repeat this process up until the dough is a little bit more resistant, and then you know when it's done. And then this will be covered again and rest for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, it's time for the next stretch and fold. You probably already feel at that time that the dough has way more strength than at the first set. And this tells you you're in a good way. As this is a no-knead recipe, I usually have always the same steps. 2 times stretch and folds, and then I'm doing usually 2 sets of lamination, which I will show you after the dough has been rested for another 30 minutes. So for the lamination, what you need to do is first of all add a little bit of water on your countertop. Not too much, as it will be a little bit hard to stretch out the dough. And then you take the dough out of the bowl and then you stretch it in all directions. This takes some time. If it looks like that, this is perfect. This will really help to generate the gluten network. And then all we need to do is fold it up again into a nice round dough ball, and then you can also use a dough scraper or your hands to form this nice round shape. Place it back into the bowl and then leave it rest for another 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, we do a second set of lamination. So same procedure as last time, a little bit of water on your countertop and then stretch out the dough. I was a little bit in a hurry, so you see that I'm getting here some holes into my dough. That's not perfect, but it's fine. This can happen if you have such stiff doughs. So a little bit more of kefir would have helped me. So this goes back in the bowl and then it rests for about 4 to 6 hours up until the dough doubles in size. And after that time the dough look like this. Now it's time to shape the dough. Therefore, flour your countertop and then dump the dough onto it. And then all we do is pull the dough upside down and then we pre-shape it a little bit with our hands. Form a round dough ball. And then I'm using my favorite shaping technique that I'm using now for a year. For that, all you need to do is put a little bit of flour on the top side and then rotate the dough in your hands and then just seam the edges with your fingers. And then we rotate the dough 90 degrees and we do it the same. And then you can squeeze all the edges together and transfer it into the floured Benetton. And this looks already fine, so there's no stitching needed because it's a very stiff dough, as I said. And this will now be covered in the fridge and will rest overnight. And at the next morning, it looks like that. Pretty nice, isn't it? I've preheated the oven to 250 degrees Celsius, and today I'm using my Dutch oven again, which I haven't used for over a year now. So I'm taking here parchment paper or baking paper and flip the dough upside down into the cast iron pan. And then we need to score the dough. You can use such a razor blade like me. Always score in a 45-degree angle. This will help to create some beautiful ear. And then I just did some decoration on the loaf. So then I'm adding some ice cubes to the cast iron pan, and then I close the lid, and this will go back into the oven at 250 degrees Celsius, that's 482 degrees Fahrenheit. And this will bake now for 50 minutes, and then it's time to pull the lid up. And this will now bake for another 30 minutes at 220 degrees Celsius, that's 428 degrees Fahrenheit. Already has developed a beautiful ear. And then after that time, it's time to pull out the loaf out of the oven. And look at this. Doesn't that look really cool? Sound is perfect. See blisters, and this will now cool down. And after it has been cooled down, let's have a look inside. So let's cut the loaf. That's always my favorite part. Wow, what a beautiful color, and look at this crumb. Looks really cool even though the hydration was quite low. And here are some more impressions. You see these golden crust with cracks and the blisters from the long fermentation. The smell is incredible, and all had been done by just using kefir. So why not enjoying a slice of that bread with the fresh poured kefir? Enjoy and bon appetit! And there you have it, a sourdough loaf with a kefir kick that delivers that gorgeous golden crust and a truly unique tangy crumb. My kitchen still smells amazing. I hope this inspires you to get experimenting. So what do you think? Have you ever baked with milk kefir or any interesting liquid in your sourdough? Let me know your wildest experiments down in the comments. I genuinely love to hear about them. If this video helped you on your sourdough journey or just made you hungry, please give it a like. It really helps the channel. And if you want to have more sourdough adventures, tips, and maybe a few more of my cheeky experiments, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. We've got plenty more lovely content coming your way from Luxembourg. I wish you a great day. Adieu and goodbye.